All right, welcome back, Your Way Workshop participants, as well as all of you watching in the replay as well. This is our wrap-up session for our travel month session, and I can't wait to hear all the fun conversations that were happening in our breakout groups over 4 questions. So briefly, our 4 questions for this month, just to refresh everyone. How have you scrapbooked travel before, and which way is your most favorite? Which project have you done as your most favorite? Of all the options out there for scrapbooking travel, what works well for you and what doesn't work at all? How do you typically choose which photos to include and which photos to exclude in your photo book projects or your travel projects? And what travel experience do you want to document next, and how do you think you will approach it? All right, who wants to share one of their lessons learned?
I'll go first. One of my biggest things on my last trip was making sure I was in the photos. We tell a lot of stories, but we don't always tell our own story. And I want to make sure that I'm in it, and that the trip also can be told from my lens. Sometimes we worry so much about, is everybody else having a good time? What is everybody else into? Because as the mom,
yes,
the planners of these trips or the organizers, we don't stop to think about us. And I did a whole album about me and a Vegas trip, and through my lens, and it was actually my most favorite. So telling our stories, and who cares if it was the best hair day? Who cares if you look the best? You've got to be there. The other piece of advice I loved that someone else gave, and I can't remember who to give credit to, but they said, everybody's taking selfies, we all have our phones, but as a family, if you take all of those different perspectives, everybody taking the photos, and that makes a really cool layout because you get every family member's perspective.
Oh, I love that.
So then it may cause a variety of photos you have to choose from, but it might give you a different lens as well. I like those.
I never thought to do that.
Those are 2 great tips. Thank you.
Oh.
All right, who's next? What a great way to kick it off.
I was chatting with my groups, and my biggest struggle with travel books and things like that is that obviously there's a huge amount of photos, and usually when I'm traveling, I'm taking my daughter with me, and you know how that you get emotionally attached to the whole thing, and it's always like the first time they've gone somewhere, which, dude, usually it's the first time I've been somewhere too, but for some reason I don't take that emotional aspect on it because I'm not 5.
Yeah.
And I was talking with a lot of my groups, and it just seemed like the consensus I'm starting to reach is that maybe I don't need to make a travel book all about my daughter's perspective all the time. It's not like my daughter's book all the time. It really is my book and my trip, and yes, the family came, but it really does narrow it down because most of the photos I take are of my daughter doing things. Yeah. And I can use those photos to tell stories later of yeah, okay, she's really brave. She does this.
Correct.
But it doesn't need to be 45 pictures of Abby on the zip line. Which normally is really hard for me to absorb. So
I love that idea, because sometimes if we're looking at all these photos from a trip, we think, okay, I have to pick all the ones that are good or the best to capture this trip, but it doesn't mean that some of those photos don't have another life somewhere else. You still have them. Choosing them for one project doesn't mean they don't exist or they're not valuable. It just means they don't fit this particular story in the context you've given for it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Bree. Are you petting a cat?
No, it's my dog.
Oh, dog.
It is actually really big, but she is mad because the air conditioner is broke.
Oh.
And she's making me hotter, which is awesome.
Awesome. All right. Who's next?
I can talk about some of the things our group mentioned.
Great.
We talked about the different formats and how sometimes 12 by 12 seems right, and sometimes a mini book, or sometimes a photo book, and how sometimes you get overwhelmed because it was such an epic trip that none of those will do it justice.
Yes.
But then the reality is then you didn't do anything. So now your epic trip sits, in your camera roll.
Yes.
So we were talking about how sometimes it doesn't have to be its own project, that it can be just 12 by 12 pages in your current albums or, pocket pages in Project Life, and maybe that's, you know, enough to cover it. And sometimes just making it work so that you actually do it instead of making it this big overwhelming project.
So related to that, I'm just going to give a little teaser without sharing the full, thank you, Amy, without sharing the full reveal of it. Kim and I have been working on this idea, and we're going to introduce it during our next refresh retreat, which starts July 23rd, of a way to capture a part of your travel so that you can feel like you've done something, even if it's not the only thing you ever want to do. And so we're going to have you guys experiment with this during our next member refresh retreat. So I don't want to share too much because it's so fun. And I think it's going to be a really good solution. So
I like that. And I think kind of tied in with that same idea, someone also mentioned just getting pictures printed so that when you're ready to decide what that project is, sometimes just having some of your favorites printed helps lead you or guide you and helps get you started. So you don't have to go through your 1,300 pictures, you know, and get it down to 400, but just printing some favorites and, you know, starting with some layouts or starting with some planning.
I love that. Thank you.
I think the most mind-blowing thing that I heard, I believe it was Dolores that said it, and Peggy said that she does the same thing, of, you know, so often a lot of us will do the trip and we'll say day 1 we did this, and day 2 we did this, and day 3 we did this. And Dolores was saying how, you know, she'll take, if they went swimming on day 1, 3, and 5, all the swimming pictures go into one layout, and then all of the hiking pictures go in another one. I was like, whoa, that seemed like really freeing to think of it in that way.
It makes, I think, it more interesting too.
Yeah.
Because you can see, like, when you look at themes in your travel, the things that you do, and you can talk about how much you enjoyed the swimming or how much you didn't enjoy the swimming versus just the simple facts of here's what we did. Awesome.
Also really helpful. I took a huge break in time from scrapbooking, and I'm going back now to capture some of those vacations. And so we had a Florida vacation. So there was the day 1, day 3, day 5, we were at the beach. But I was like, was that day 1, day 3, or day 5? I don't know. So I couldn't do that. But I could lump them together and put some of those, you know, kind of like activities. And it turned out great. You know, I was very pleased with it. It was not the normal, you know, day 1, day 2, day 3 thing. And so it was freeing, and it saved me.
Correct. I love that idea.
It saved embarrassment.
Just to make it a little bit easier, and I think it's one of the reasons why I don't necessarily organize my layouts chronologically either, because if you open my album, you don't notice that there's a whole month missing because it's organized by categories. All right, who's next?
I think one thing that's helped me in the past is to have something of a framework. And whether, in terms of whether you're using, like for me, when I've done some, what travel I have documented has been related to when we were living overseas, and I was doing a Project Life album, and I managed to actually do a week-long trip in those pages, and part of it was that I knew I had decided I was going to have two or I guess it was 4 actually, like four sides of 12 by 12 design A pocket pages from Project Life, and I knew that was the space that I had. If I wanted to do like a little theme, like, you know, the animals that we saw, could do that as a mini page. But overall, so I used a lot of collaging. I had to really just like, okay, I can't include 50 pictures of my daughter in the swimming pool. I have room for maybe 4 if I collage them together. And that made me have to evaluate those pictures and say, okay, you know, this is the important part of what I want to document here, and that's what I've got. So I think that because my main problem with travel scrapbooking is I feel incredibly overwhelmed by the quantity of photos and stories that so much so that I don't as I say, I've never documented. I've done like 2 pages from my wedding, which was 22 years ago. Partly because there was like thousands of pictures, and so I have the same problem with travel. So I think, you know, I think I'm probably going to have to start with some shorter trips, and maybe do. Maybe try the photo. I mean, so photo book as a possibility for me, because then it's that, again, there's that templates already there, that might help. So
I've also found that trips that are further in the past can be a little easier because you don't remember as much.
Yep.
So you don't feel as attached and deeply connected to it than versus a trip that was last year.
Yeah.
You feel that sense of overwhelm, like, oh my God, we did all these things. It was so amazing. I can't pick. Whereas I've been working slowly on this traveler's notebook from when we went to Paris with my parents in 2001. And I barely remember anything. I remember eating chocolate croissants and seeing the Eiffel Tower and going to the Louvre. Of course, I remember the food first. That's what I remember. And so I'm just, I'm making a fun little project, but it's certainly not as detailed as if I'd made it, that year. But I think that gives it a little more freedom and you get more experience in making those selections.
Yeah.
I will put a plug in for, since you're talking about framework, the finishing project is that we've been doing some work with. It's actually in the Simple Scrapper membership. There's a finishing project class, and it has a lot of that framework that you're talking about, like how to find your framework and see what you're going to work with on your project. So
thanks for mentioning that, Bree, because we're going to be doing a live session of that in August. So just a solid opportunity. I think probably do it over maybe 3 weeks or the whole month. I haven't figured out the exact dates yet, but giving members that opportunity to say, okay, we're going to do this together. So it's going to be awesome. Thanks.
Yep, live is very helpful. I find I get a lot. When I buy classes and then I just never use them because life happens and it's like, well, nobody's expecting anything of me. But if it's live, then
writers.
Yeah. Well, I think that's one of the fun parts of the finishing project is because you can use it to finish anything.
I'm finding with a little insight that my parents did a lot of scrapbooking. My mom did a lot of scrapbooking. But one of the things that I found in her scrapbooks somewhat recently was a story that she had added about a trip. It was their first trip in a trailer that they had bought. It was our first family trip in this trailer. And it was frankly a bit of a fiasco. We both got sick. This was kind of an epic family story. Like, I knew this story. I could have told you what the story was when I started to read it. But to have that, first of all, she wrote it out in her handwriting. And second of all, it was in her voice.
Yeah.
And so there's no scrapbook of that trip. There's just this layout, and it's a treasure. It's pure, unmitigated gold in a scrapbook for me. So don't feel like try to avoid the all or none, right? Especially for those of you with families. Your kids, just think about the story that you tell about whatever that trip is, that you've told that story 15 times.
Yeah.
And maybe just scrapbook that one. And you might be just planting a little gold that will be something that means a lot to somebody forever.
Well, yeah, definitely not every story or every travel deserves its own big thing. I went to Boston for a week with my husband. It was actually for a conference, but we did a lot of sightseeing and fun stuff. I did like a 6x12 double page collage. There really wasn't a story. We went to Boston. We saw the things you see in Boston. Like, there was no really emotional attachment other than like, let's go do stuff and eat food. So it doesn't have to be something big every time. Or in your example, maybe there's something that's already there. Our new prompt in the bucket list project this week is all about taking words or a story that's already written and using that as the basis of your layout, because sometimes it's hard to dig into a meatier story. And that can be the case with travel as well. If you have something that somebody else wrote or that you sent in an email, maybe you sent emails to your mom when you were on a trip. Take those emails and make that your photo book or your project. You don't have to start from scratch. Sometimes there's something that's already there.
I plan to print out a whole bunch of memes to document our current world, because
love
how
that.
many of us have survived?
Hmm.
I'm a teacher, and my coworkers and I think it was like weeks 2 through 5, we just survived by sending each other memes. Like that's what got us through.
But they're so funny. You have to do this something with them. They're so
I would love
my
to.
mother-in-law sends me a meme every morning about this.
I love
Which is so random because she's not technologically inclined. She's not like social media-esque, but every morning at 10 a.m. exactly, she sends me
And you can document that.
You
and so I don't have
totally.
to actually do any of the looking up of anything. I'm super stoked about this.
Yes.
That's fun.
Do not lose that phone.
I would love to see the reactions, though, 100 years from now.
Oh
When
my
people
gosh.
look back at all these memes, they're going to be like, what was wrong with these people? When we think back of like our ancestors in like the early 1900s and, you know, they're living off the land to survive. And here we're like, it's Wednesday, I don't know, Saturday of, 87th of March.
Yeah.
What a different world.
I love it.
Well, I think now teachers deserve that same role as other types of essential workers and first responders. So thank you for your service. I know we have lots of teachers here, so.
I have one thing I wanted to mention too, that our group talked about when it was the thing about how do you choose photos. And I feel like there's like a theme. It's all like the F's. So Bernadette talked about picking a focal photo. So kind of along the line of like the themes that Shannon was talking about. You don't even need, you just pick like one photo and then you can always have the other ones as supporting. So they can be smaller, or maybe one photo's on a layout and these are on packet pages. But you're not looking for like all the best photos. You're looking for like your one focal photo. And then Nancy Ann talked about highlighting people's favorites. So if you travel with other people, like whatever were their favorites, maybe it wasn't yours, but if you have a photo that documents their favorite, that's a way to choose. I'm big on like the feeling. Sometimes you just look at a photo, maybe it's not the best one, but like makes you feel something.
Yes.
And I think that's the advantage of doing it later. Like you said, maybe you don't remember, but you can feel when you see those photos. And then Christine, I think it was talked about doing story first. So she almost always like writes her whole story out and then she finds the photo that fits it. So that's how they go through determining how to pick what photos. So it's kind of less overwhelming because you're starting from those aspects as opposed to just like everything.
Well, I think with the story first too, whether you're talking about a single layout or a larger project, you realize that actually that the photos aren't as important as you think they are. Because if you start photos first, it can become so overwhelming and you're trying to pick the best. But if you tell the story, some stories can be captured in the words and maybe there's not even the right photo.
Yeah.
But if you have a story and then you have photos and then some of those overlap and some of them don't, that really gives a more complete picture.
And some stories don't have photos.
Yeah.
And maybe they won't. Maybe they have like a bit of memorabilia, or maybe it's just, a journal card or something. But I thought
Well, the
that
best
was
stories
an
aren't
interesting way to
photogenic,
like
for sure.
break it down.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I said some of the best stories aren't photogenic at all.
Oh, no.
Or you look back at your pictures and you're like, this doesn't really capture the experience as I felt it in the moment, like, yeah, I mean, because you can, like, you when you're, yeah, the story enfleshes in some ways the experience in ways almost better than a photo can. I know they say a picture is worth 1,000 words, but I beg to differ.
I could see that.
So Shannon Murphy left a great comment in the chat as well about sending yourself a postcard, like even multiple times on your trip, to like basically journaling to yourself. That's a fun technique.
I have never done that, and I'm really excited to do that. It never even occurred to me, because I buy postcards for like the perfect shot. Sometimes when I don't, we were discussing at our group, like, sometimes you just can't get the shot, and I never thought to just mail it to myself.
I have a friend who has sent me a postcard to every country he's been to since the year 2003. I think,
Wow.
for 17 years. And so someday I'm going to give him, but I've saved every single one. I have him on like just regular jump rings, but I've saved every single one. And that's his scrapbook for his vacations. Cause you know, he's a single dude. He doesn't scrapbook or anything. He doesn't even take that many pictures, but he's been to, you know, 50 some odd countries. And even when he goes back to other countries, he'll send me a postcard again. So of course they have the, you know, the postmark on it for the date and everything. So that's probably one of my favorite travel scrapbooks, even though it's not mine.
Our oldest daughter and her family are full-time RVers, and they've traveled all over the country. And the first couple of years, she would send postcards because our address is her permanent address. So she'd send postcards to our address that would show pictures of them doing certain things in certain places, and telling us, you know, what they're doing and where they were and all of that kind of stuff. And I have a whole stack of them that she had sent here, and they're fun because you get to see what they're doing. So I understand about you and your friend. Yeah, that's a neat thing to have.
Jennifer, you said it's not your own scrapbook, but that could be something you could do if you took a couple pictures of those and just wrote about how it made you feel in your relationship with this person and how they always sent it. That could be a pretty cool thing for yours too.
Absolutely.
That's true. No, that is a really good story to tell.
Yeah.
I just took pictures of it for the travel guide. So if you see one that shows, it actually shows my address, but it's not my current address, so it's not a big deal. Plus my current address is at the end of every email that I send you guys. But I just took pictures of it. So actually it's a pretty good bucket list story to tell. So I might do that. Thank you for that idea. Yay. I walked away with an idea.
Oh, lots of them today.
We are past time. Any final brilliant thoughts from your conversations? I want to thank everyone for coming tonight. This has been a great attendance and such a lively discussion.
This was
Well,
so much
one
fun.
thing-
Thank you.
Yeah. One thing we talked about is just taking less photos.
Yes. That's hard, but
It's hard, but then you don't have as many to choose from. So
yes.
You don't have to
I'll
choose.
add beware collecting them from people you travel with.
yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
I've been trying to delete more in the moment. Like not like the end of the day. I don't have that kind of discipline. But like I took 10 photos. I'm gonna go in and I'm gonna delete all but like 2 or 3. Like immediately all the junk I'm gonna try to delete. Because I know that I'm probably not gonna have the discipline to go back later.
one of the things that I do when I have a lot of photos is I'll put them into a folder that can be the screensaver on my computer or the wallpaper, so that, you know, maybe I'm not scrapbooking yet, or maybe I'm in the middle of it, because I will do the same thing with finished scrapbook pages from a project to kind of keep me going. And so it switches every few minutes, and, you know, I'm on my computer enough that it just kind of keeps them in your forefront a little bit, and it gives me helps me sometimes say, okay, you know what, these are the ones I want to keep, and I can narrow down. But it also kind of keeps me motivated to work on a project to see it.
I love that idea. I think anything you can do to really stay connected to your stories. You know, you guys know I'm not the world's most prolific scrapbooker, not like Monica who can do a photo, you know, layout a day for a million years. I made 4 layouts in the past 36 hours. I mean, that's impressive for me. And it's about like keeping it top of mind and just going with that momentum. So
That could be awesome inspiration too for whatever you're working on.
yeah, I love that idea. Thanks, Monica.
I'm so excited for you, by the way. I can't wait to see
Thank you.
them.
We'll see if it continues. I was just excited. I guess probably I needed a break after finishing the travel guide. So I need to dive into some fun. All right, guys. Thank you so much. Thank you all of you who are watching on the recording. I hope you will all join us next month for, what is next month's theme is simplifying projects. Thank you, Kim. Okay. Yes, because we're doing Finishing Project Live. Later this month still, we have Refresh. So if you're not yet a member and you enjoy this type of experience, I hope to see you inside of the membership, because that's where we continue to have lots of fun just like this. All right, guys. Take care. Have a great week.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.